This is Andy Tube. This video is about the oil wick in the oscillating rock shaft of a Singer Model 1591. The oscillating rock shaft is this piece right here with the fork coming down. So kind of goes from there to there with the fork. I'll turn the hand wheel so you can see the movement, right? Rocking back and forth. So part of that over here is to move the feed bar that holds the feed dog. And then the fork comes down here to the hook shaft. And that's the oscillation part. It makes the hook oscillate back and forth. Okay? And it has an oil wick. Let me start with that. If you've seen some of my earlier videos about the oil wicks that I was missing and the oil wick that I did have, the parts list showing this part of the machine has a kind of folded oil wick over here in the picture with a little dash line that goes up like that. And it's the part number identifies as a oscillating rock shaft oil wick braided cotton, which I never seen a cotton oil wick before, but that's what it said. So I was all excited, except I couldn't find the wick. I was like, okay, up on the top here is an oil port. Okay, so I thought, well, I don't know, maybe they put it in at the factory or something. But then a viewer commented about wicks on my much earlier video, the presser bar video, where I replaced the missing wick. And he said that there's a wick down here, and that he pulled out about an inch of it and it was all rotten cotton and falling apart. But he said, look up in the fork. And I said, oh, okay, didn't look there. So when I looked up there, I found a hole. I found where the wick is supposed to be kind of sticking out a little bit, but of course I didn't have anything that I could see. So that started my adventure of a wick for it. I want to turn the machine over here and show you. I eventually got a wick in it, and I'm satisfied with it. And I'm going to show you some of the stuff I tried and what I ended up doing. But I was so happy to finally get the wick in and working, I didn't want to take it out to make a video showing how to put it in. So I'll tell you that part, okay? And I think it'll make sense to you. So first, let me flip the machine over so that we can see in there. And you'll see my new little wick sticking out in there. So here's a picture of what I saw when I turned this over and looked for the wick. You'll see the hole up inside here. Okay, and you notice, or I'll explain that the end of the hole, or the opening at the inside of the fork, is a little bit larger than the opening inside the oscillating rock shaft, which I'm going to start calling the ORS. Okay, so now here you can see my new wick right there in the hole. Yay! Okay, so when you put oil in the oil port at the top that I showed you, it goes into the ORS, and then the oil eventually gets to that wick, and some will seep out to lubricate the inside of the fork. Because the fork has this slide block right there. It slides and swivels, and that runs the hook shaft. So if you can see that block moves up and down in the fork as the fork moves. There we go. So let's talk about the wick. I reached out to a few people, and I said that one viewer said it was cotton, the little piece that he found that was rotted away, it was cotton. I reached out to some other people, and it was funny because some didn't know it was there, and actually one guy said, yeah, it's cotton, it's a braided cotton, and he said, if it's there, don't pull it out. Well, too late for me, you know, but he estimated that it's about an 1/8 inch round or less. And the consensus seems to be, if you have the wick there, you can put oil in the top of the shaft and you can test it to see if it comes out the wick or dampens the wick. Now, if the wick is very dirty and it feels hard, then they still said that they wouldn't take it out. That if it's not rotten, if it's not all falling apart and the fibers coming apart, they would drip some alcohol into the wick, and then they would with the machine turned normally, they would put a little alcohol in the oil port here and use that to soften any hard wick or dried up oil in the wick. And then they'd add more oil and just kind of keep trying to flush it. And then when it softened up and liquid, whether alcohol or oil, could start to flow out of the wick into the fork, then they would just kind of keep adding some oil. And even if it was too much oil at first and it kind of leaked out the crevices, that would be okay. They could clean that up. Okay. Now, what I did then was started searching for cotton oil wicks, and I didn't find a lot out there. I found some fiberglass wicks for lanterns. I found big wicks for oil lamps, some of which were cotton. So I just started buying braids, anything I could find braided cotton. This was my first attempt, although it's 1/64 of an inch bigger than an 1/8. This is a package of clothesline cotton. I bought it at the hardware store for $5. And it's 100% pure cotton, and it's braided. And I said, yeah, this will do it, you know. And the idea of what my friend said was it's like this, it's folded over coming out the hole. So when you look into the hole, you kind of see that. And he said that the first time he found it, that he could kind of pick at it a little bit and it seemed firm, it seemed kind of hard, but he got it, I think first with a needle, then a tweezer, he got it to come out of the hole about 1/4 inch. And that's how he could see it was folded over like that. So he managed to push it back down into the hole. And then he used the alcohol and oil technique to soften it up, and it's been working good ever since. So the problem is, how to get this in the shaft. And I tried, man did I try. I tried, you know, manipulating this so the slide block was up high, and I thought, well, everybody's estimating that the wick is about 3.5 inches long, maybe a little bit more. So I thought maybe what I could do was start poking it in, poking a piece in, right, as much as I could, and then cutting like a little 1/2 inch, folding it over, and stuffing that little short piece in next to the long piece into the hole. That didn't work at all. I said, okay, never mind that. Then I found some smaller, some like 2.4 millimeter wick at the fabric store. Hildy and Joe, thick cotton cord. And you see it's smaller. I said, yeah, this'll work. Okay, so I tried the same thing. I tried sticking, you know, cutting a piece like 3.5 inches long and sticking the two ends and jamming it in there. Didn't work. I could stick one end in pretty good and then take a little tail of it and fold it over and try to stick like about the last 1/2 inch in together. It just never seemed to work. Then I noticed, where is it, that this cord from the fabric store is different than this cord from the hardware store. See how this is just several cotton fibers braided together. It's got some kind of a cotton core that's smaller threads. So I think they make a bundle of smaller threads and then they braid a harder, stiffer cotton on the outside for wear. Right? Okay. So inside here it's the same thing, but there's something, see how it's gray in here? And there's some other type of fibers. So I said, okay. Next, I found this in my storeroom. Put this back here. And this is a very, like a stiff cotton cord, but it's even smaller. And I kind of tried this. I was having a little luck, but then I started testing it, and even though it was labeled, it's not braided. You see this? It's twisted. And I thought, man, this is awful stiff for cotton. So this was from my old job. I left 20 years ago. I contacted a guy I used to work with who ran the supply room, actually, and he said it's like got nylon fibers in it. So that's why it's stiff. And it's actually used to pull a pull rope through a conduit, so then you can use the rope to pull cables. And he says it's not going to be very absorbent for oil. I said, okay, so forget that. Then I can't find any more braided cotton, so I took just this was old cotton. This is cotton that we use to tie up cable bundles, like in a splice. Okay, and it's twisted. It's very malleable. It's very soft. It's 100% cotton. It's not braided. It's twisted. So you can just untwist it here, right? And it's very small diameter. So I was thinking, heck. And then my wife said, give me some of that. And then she braided me some pieces. She made her own braided cotton for me. She took 3 pieces, braided them together, and it's got It's about the right size, and I thought, finally I've got a solution. Even though it's twisted, all these things are twisted cotton, so I thought, well, now it's braided, so I don't have to worry about it coming untwisted and getting jammed up in these parts. I'll explain these parts on the end here called centers and how they work. But I tried to use this and get it in here in the space of the fork, right? And the pressure needed to push it down in there. I tried using barbecue sticks, and I used plastic sticks, and I used metal sticks and all kinds of stuff, but it kind of was shredding this softer cotton as it went, and it started. So I thought, man, that's going to like deteriorate, it's going to make a problem. So, okay. And I still don't know, and I couldn't find out why Singer wanted to use cotton there and why they did. Because all the other oil wicks or grease wicks I've ever seen are felt. I thought, I don't know if it's because of this movement rocking back and forth. Braided cotton will hold up better because the wick is in here loose, and then it's kind of anchored in the hole. A loop of it comes up that hole. So we're speculating during manufacture that they threaded a wick in from one of these ends and got it poked up in the hole. We don't know. Who knows? But that gave me the idea about trying to put a new wick in from the hole, from a hole on the end. So that's where I learned about these centers, and I'm going to show you these. I took it apart. I'm going to show you how to do it, because the thing is, if you have a bad wick in there, it's going to be hard maybe to put a new wick in, and I don't think really you can clean out the old wick, and I'll explain why. Okay, so this is a set screw for the center, and the center is kind of this bullet shaped head that tapers down and goes through this bracket into the end of the ORS. Oh boy, I really tightened that back up. Okay. Matter of fact, when I got this out, I couldn't get this center out, this piece called the center. And I knew it was going to be full of old dried oil and stuff. So I set the machine up upside down, and I dropped drops of WD-40 in here, and I heated it up, and it has a very odd little screw slot, kind of curved on one end. It's not flat all the way across, but I was finally able to get it loose enough of dried oil that I could start moving it back and forth. Okay, right? So it's not a screw, and it's not a hinge stud, so to speak, although it is. But I was able to pull it out. I actually had to grab it with, oh shoot, where are they? I had to grab it with a pair of needle nose to get a grip on it because I had so much oil on it. But there is the center. And you see this little bullet shape on the end goes into the end of the oscillating rock shaft. And this center has a flat spot with for the set screw, and you see how wide that spot is. It's so when you put this in, and there's another one over here on the other end, you can push those in and adjust it to center that oscillating rock shaft, the ORS, onto for the fork and the slide block. You can get everything centered here, so that's why they're called centers. Okay, so like I said, they don't have any threads, and these are both the same piece. Okay, so let me give you a little. I put these on my flatbed scanner to get a little better view of them. So you see what that's like. Okay, now since I did not have any wick showing up here, I took a like a bottle brush, a couple different sizes, and I stuck it in here, and I could go all the way, and I pulled it out and twisted it and pulled it out, thinking if the cotton wick had rotted away in there, I could maybe get some of it out, and nothing came out. Nothing. So I said, okay, I guess my shaft is empty there. So then I started playing around with sticking these different wicks in here, and I'd stick them in till they went like as far as they're going to go. Then I would I'd have the machine turned over, and let's see if I can get this up. Let me set it up. Okay, so I've got the wick stuck in there, right? And the oil port hole lines up perfectly with the oil wick hole inside the fork. When it was empty, I could stick like my barbecue stick right through, right? So my idea was, with the wick in there, I could poke from the oil hole and poke up a loop in the fork. And of course, that did not work for me at all. And I tried several. The closest I got to it was using a Allen wrench, because it was really good and stiff, and it had like this little handle I could hold, right? And I even got to where I was holding it like that and tapping it with my 2-ounce hammer, right? I'm gonna get that thing in there. And of course I bent my Allen wrench a little bit, but I couldn't get the wick. And I think it's because the opening inside the shaft is smaller than the opening inside the fork. It's like a tapered or funnel, and I just couldn't get it through there. Oh man. So, and I mean, we're talking about I don't know, hours over a couple of days where I just couldn't get a wick in there. Turn this back over here. So I, besides being hugely disappointed, oops, let me move this back now because I got it messed up. That's the other thing I found. If you take the centers out, the shaft has pulled off of this center now. So I kind of have to get it back up there and get it out. There we go. And get it lined up with the other center. And there's my roller over here. That's the other thing that I found, was the hole inside the shaft also is kind of like funnel shape. It's bigger at the end, and then it tapers down to a much smaller hole. On the inside. So I thought, man, whatever I get in there, I'm not going to be able to get out. Like there's not going to be any you know, way to do it. I thought, well, maybe I could take this other center off and like push it through, but you know, it's going to be a flimsy wick. It's going to get like jammed up at one of the holes. Oh boy. So you can tell I was having a good time. See? So I had this great time so that you don't have to. So I gave up on that, okay? And then if you take this off to clean or look or anything, when you put it back, you got to be sure you line up the flat spot, of course, right? Have to do that. And then you have to line up your shaft so that little bullet point goes in the hole, and you have to be sure this end over here is lined up, okay, with this. And a way to tell how far to push it is when the slide block is centered in the fork. See, if you have it like this, then the slide block is sticking out this way. Okay, if this side was pushed in too far, the slide block would be sticking out this side of the fork. So when you get everything lined up and you get the center pushed in so the slide block is centered in the fork, that's where you want to hold it in place while you put your set screw back in to permanently hold it, right? And all that wiggling around now, I'm nervous that I lost my flat spot. And look, I did. See that? Okay, line up the flat spot with the set screw hole. Push it in. Let me get my set screw started in there. Not tight. Make sure that this is lined up all the way across. Okay, then I will finish tightening that so that it holds the stop at the right distance to keep the ORS centered. Right? Yeah. So you can see my slide block is centered in the fork, which means the whole shaft is centered. And if you don't do that, what can happen is you can get some parts rubbing. See, it's another thing I found out, so you didn't have to. These parts right here between this bracket and the fork can rub a little bit. And you get a weird sound like, what is that? What is that? Then I realized, oh, wait a minute, it's too far. Okay, so I got that back together. So here's what I did. Here is exactly what I did in the end. I pulled out my 1/8 inch wool wicking that I had on hand, that I bought from McMaster Carr. It's the 95% wool. It's softer than the 85% wool, but this is what I had on hand. And I cut off about a 3 3/4 inch piece, and I trimmed the edges, and I stuck it in the hole. And because it's wool, I was able to start pushing it in the hole. So I'd come in from this side, I'd have the wick over here, and I just started stuffing it down in the hole. And it does help if you go when you stuff it. So when I finally got down to about that much sticking out of the hole, right, I folded it over. Now I guess I had a little bit more, maybe at least an inch. I folded it over and started pushing at the end, and slowly, without damaging it, I got it in like that. Okay, and I had tried that with the cotton and I couldn't do it. So I would recommend, if you don't have a wick, or if you have a really terrible wick and you want to try and replace it, if you've got pieces in there, maybe you could pull the center off and blow air in there, or even just flush it out with water and try and wash whatever's in there out. Dry it, and then close it back up, and then try stuffing some kind of a braided cotton or a wool wick piece in there. Now this came the closest. My wife's idea, and she said I should mention it even though I couldn't get it to work, because this kind of twisted cotton is available mostly all around the world, whereas wool wicking may not be. You may not be able to get any of this where you live, or it might be a big hassle. So she said I should mention this because 3 of these braided together, I almost got it. And maybe by then I was frustrated, and if I had been more patient, maybe I could have got this in there to work. Okay? So, let me show you how my new wool wick looks in there. Right. Let's see if I can get this as close as possible there. So it's filling up the whole hole, and it's got oil on it. And I've been playing around with the machine and stuff, and it seems very stable in there. So I'm happy with it, because I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything in there. And what I found out, I'm going to put the machine back in the right position. What I found out was when I put oil in the oil port, at the top of the ORS, when I put oil in here, it just ran right through the hole in the fork, and when I come back later, there'd be oil all over everything here. So now I'm going to keep the oil that I put. It's going to be up in here and in the wick, and it will slowly dissipate, and it seems like the faster the machine goes, oscillating back and forth, a little bit more oil gets on the inside of the fork. Okay, and then real quick, I'm just going to show you where the recommended oil points are on this. On the slide block, on the side of it, I would just put a little drop of oil. They show that, but they don't show exactly where. So I tend to put it on the This is kind of a rivet that holds it on. I tend to put it right in here on the side of the rivet. Not in the rivet. I don't think it goes anywhere inside the rivet, because it's only about that deep. Then these two centers where they meet the shaft, you put a drop of oil, and that's how the bullets points of those centers stay oiled, not from the wick inside. In my opinion, they stay oiled because you oil them here, just like you oil some other moving shaft ends like that. And then finally you put a couple of 3 drops up here in the oil port to go in and saturate your wick, whether you have an existing one or you replaced it. So that's my story about the oscillating rock shaft oil wick on a Singer model 1591. Now, there we go. And it seems to work very well. Like I said, one night during the news, I spun it like this for about 5 minutes, and the oil was just seeping into that rock shaft fork. It wasn't flying all over or anything. Just kept it lubricated. It was nice. So there's my final solution, 1/8 inch wool wick. I'll put a link in the description under the video for those of you who've never been to McMaster-Carr. This was cheap cotton twine used in the garden and for tying up cables. This was a stiff 2.4 millimeter cord from the fabric store. Since this has nylon, I think we'll just forget that. And this was a 100% cotton braided cord from the hardware store. So say $5.99, $2.99. I don't know what this would cost because I already had it. And you have to buy 5 feet of this if you buy any, and it's $1 something a foot. So with delivery and everything, I don't know, think of it as maybe 10 bucks. So a sewing club, if you got a bunch of 15.91s, that'd be a good deal. And when they say next day delivery, man, they mean it. I ordered this before, months and months ago, for the 221, and I ordered it one morning. They said, yeah, delivery tomorrow. I was like, eh. And about 1 p.m. the next day, ding dong, and I opened the door and there's a package from McMaster-Carr. I have no idea how they did that, because they're sure not in Arizona where I live. Thanks for tuning in. I kind of apologize that I didn't show how exactly I put that in, but I'm so happy I got it in there. I'm not pulling it out. If the wool wick ever fails, then I'll come up with a solution. And if it's in my lifetime, I'll find a fix for it and make a video then. Okay? Thanks so much for tuning in to the adventures of the braided cotton wick on the ORS. I hope you come back and visit me. Take care of yourself, please.